this is going to be my take on Blademancer. All right, this is my take on Blademancer. I think it's a good trait for the game, and I do think that it should become a permanent trait. When someone throws a projectile, whether it be a throwing knife, a spear, a bow, like arrow, bow and arrow, crossbow, any kind of like projectile kind of stuff that is retrievable, you can pull it out of someone using dark sight. It can happen through walls up to 100 meters. That's kind of what Blademancer does. A lot of people talking about it, as far as I know, and a lot of people raging about it. I just want to bring up a few points so that people can kind of see where my logic is, but then also maybe reconsider where their logic is. The weapon itself, all right? The weapons that people are complaining about the most, these are the big ones that people are hitting on. Even though it works with a ton of stuff, these are the ones people are bitching about. Crossbow and bow. You'll see here if you look at the stats, right? If you look at the stats, this crossbow does 246 damage. 246 damage at 10 meters. Okay, that damage number is the damage indicated from Crytek that it should be doing at 10 meters, not 100, right? At 10 meters. A lot, and I mean a lot, of the fights where you're in a fight with crossbow happen within like 10 to 30 meters. Or I should say 0 to 30 meters, right? And at least 1/3 of those meters, it 100% should one-shot you at 246 damage. Hunt has, over the years, has been a very RNG heavy game and a very inconsistent game when it comes to the way damage is indicated in Hunt and the damage hitboxes and all that kind of stuff. One of the reasons crossbow doesn't always kill at like 10 meters is because crossbow cannot pen, right? Can't penetrate anything except like chicken wire or something like that. So that means that if somebody has their arms in one of the 10,000 ways to block the main hitboxes, all right? Like if they have a fucking throwing knife, if they got a bomb lance, like if they got anything that's just like blocking their hitboxes, generally speaking, even if you shoot directly center, mass, chest, or you shoot head, all right, it can get blocked by someone's arms, and then you do arm damage. Arm damage with crossbow is not enough to kill in very close ranges. I've seen people walk away. Same thing with legs. I've seen people walk away from getting hit by a crossbow at like probably close to 10 meters. It's like 7, 8 meters. And then I've seen people really up close and personal get hit by it and not take full damage, but I don't know if it's a bug or I'm talking like a meter, 2 meters getting hit wherever. But it should one-shot you if it hits your chest or your head, right? That's the damage from it at 10 meters. Now, here's the thing. We had a patch. Someone in the comments can correct me or whatever, but we had a patch where they buffed shotguns by a buckshot specifically. They nerfed slugs and buffed buckshot to where the cone is a lot smaller, more consistent of a shot, where if you shoot center mass, like chest, and most of it hits, there's a very high chance you one tap now, where it used to fan out a lot more and be a lot more RNG on if you killed or not. And when that patch hit, there was a ton of people that were crying for nerf shotguns. Tons of them. They were like, nerf it, nerf it, nerf it, nerf it, because shotguns didn't always kill, you know, at 5 meters. Like quite often, they would be really inconsistent in one kill. They still don't always kill at 5 meters. But generally speaking, if your shot is on, they do, right? If your shot is, you know, kind of half off target, half on, then it might not kill. If your shot's only on their toe, then it's probably not going to kill, right? Like it really depends on your shot. But if your shot is true, like aiming chest, the amount of consistency that came into the game accelerated so much, where so many weapons, all the shotguns that were so inconsistent now became consistent close range weapons. After like 2 or 3 months, no one's talking about shotguns. They've moved on to the next knee jerk thing, but then they also realized that shotguns are still not the best thing in the game. So they did that pass. I'm just throwing it out there. They did that pass where they made shotguns better strictly. People bitched and moaned. And then they haven't nerfed them or anything. And we just got a more consistent Hunt Showdown as a product afterwards. The trait Blademancer, we go back to Blademancer. It just makes crossbow and bow and things more consistent. This weapon should be one-shotting you if you're within 10 meters. The damage says so. The only way it doesn't is because someone's doing fucking yoga posing crane style jujitsu in front of you and decided to jump with a fucking bomb lance out and, you know, fucking twirl their crag silencer weapon, right, as they're coming around the corner, and you hit arm. And then you die because of it because it's a one-shot weapon, okay? It's a one-shot weapon, and if you're up against like a trio, your one shot doesn't kill the shot that's supposed to, you're dead. Like that's generally what happens, right? So all I'm saying is it 100% should kill. If they want to change the numbers on crossbow and hunting bow to where, you know, they reduce the damage to like, I don't know, 140 or something, then it's like, I understand where a lot of the pain's coming from for people that are going up against Blademancer, where they're like, oh, I wouldn't have died to that, right? And it's like, no, you would have died to that if you didn't come around the corner doing this, right? Like, there's so many things in the game that manipulate your arms, even just holding a melee, right? There's so many things in the game that manipulate your arms. It doesn't matter how well you shoot. It's RNG where the bolt ends up, depending on what the opponent player is doing. So that puts a lot of power in the opponent player's hands. And I can tell you something that does not matter for that. Pretty much every rifle and shotgun in the game currently, where even if their hands are in the way, they still get their one shot, they still get their headshot because Mosin can pin arms, go through, and hit your head. Winfield can pin arms, go through, and hit your head. It depends on how far you are. But those weapons feel really consistent. And consistency matters a lot in Hunt. And so rifles are very consistent. Shotguns are now a lot more consistent than they've been for 4 or 5 years. And guess what's tailing behind? Crossbow, bow, all these things. If you try, and I mean this, try running these weapons without Blademancer and see how many times people walk away from your bolts that would have killed. Otherwise, they hit center mass. But for whatever reason, he's running with a knife out or whatever, and boom, you get an arm hit. And you're like, the fuck? That's point number one, okay? Is that they should be killing at certain ranges and they're not. Picture this, all right? There's a projectile that arcs super high up and super far down, like very quickly, right? And then there's a projectile that goes like this and then starts to arc a little bit at the end. Okay, if you just think about those projectiles, which one would be the harder one to hit? Generally speaking, the harder one to hit is going to be the one that arcs way up and then comes down. Because you can gauge distance pretty well by kind of aiming at someone and slightly putting it above or something and be like, okay, you know, with like bullet drop or something. But it's really hard to aim at the sky and then watch it go up and be like, okay, is it going to hit? Let's see. I can't even see where it landed, right? And so all I'm saying is that the arc of the weapon generally makes certain shots harder to hit than others. If somebody, okay, hits you in the head with a Mosin sniper Spitzer bullet from 150 meters, nobody really bats an eye, right? Like, that happens all the time in Hunt. But you don't hear of people getting hit by a crossbow at 150 meters. You just don't hear it. It's happened, right? Probably a handful of times across all games that Hunt has ever played, all players have ever played, where someone has gotten hit in the chest or head with a crossbow from 150 meters. Like, it just doesn't really happen. Now, the ranges at which it can happen these days, let's go down to like 80 meters, okay? 80-meter crossbow shots don't really happen in Hunt. Right now, there's more people playing crossbow and bow than ever before because of Blademancer, right? But even with that amount of people, it has yet to happen to me once during this event. even with that amount of people. And I know that's just my subjective opinion. I know there's other people that have been hit at 80 meters with a crossbow, but I'm still throwing it out there. If somebody was able to hit you in the head with a Mosin at 80 meters, or somebody is able to hit you in the chest at 80 meters with a crossbow, where the muzzle velocity, look at that muzzle velocity, is 150 versus 615, the Mosin, which one is the harder shot? Which one's the harder shot? Shooting somebody in the head, straight line, 615 muzzle velocity, or hitting someone in the body with something you have to arc fucking miles above that's going, and I guess muzzle velocity, you could put this on there if you want. It makes it 225, which is so much better. It is one third the speed of a Mosin bullet. If you're being honest with yourself, I think we can both come to the assumption that hitting a crossbow shot at 80 meters is harder than hitting a headshot Mosin shot at 80 meters. Now, I'm not going into the cost of the weapons or any of that. That's not what this weapon for. I'm just trying to get you guys in the same headspace of like, should you be rewarded for hitting a harder shot? Or should you be punished for hitting a harder shot? That's the main question that I want you pondering in your head. Because in my opinion, hitting a crossbow at 80 meters and not getting the kill really, really sucks. Hitting a Mosin headshot at 80 meters and getting rewarded is like, it doesn't do anything for me because it's just so common. It's just like, it doesn't matter if it's 80 meters or 50 meters or 25 meters. Like, it is the same thing, right? Like, but someone hits a crossbow shot at 80 meters, 90 meters, like that shit's going in montages. Like, someone's just flipping shit about that, right? The user experience of like, holy shit. And guess what? Right now, at like 80-ish meters, if you have Berserker, which I don't know if they want it to work, plus Blademancer, you potentially could kill someone at like 80 meters with a crossbow shot. Potentially. It's not even guaranteed. Not even guaranteed, but it's possible now. And it's infinitely more likely to happen now than it was in the past because it wasn't even worth shooting in the past at 80 to 100 meters because you were guaranteed not to get the kill unless you randomly headshot by shooting fucking straight in front of you, like straight into the sky. So that's point number 2 is which shot's harder to hit and do you think you should be rewarded for hitting a harder shot? And for me, the answer is I would like to be rewarded for hitting a harder shot. And I also think that crossbow at 225 muzzle velocity is harder to hit at 80 meters or whatever you want to say. That said, let's move on to point number 3. Blademancer, I didn't check instantly before this, is supposed to do 35 damage. It's supposed to do 35 damage. The reason why you're seeing huge damage off the pulls is because of Berserker. It's another trait in the game. It's supposed to be a melee attack that does double damage, and I wouldn't necessarily consider a bow or crossbow as a melee attack, personally. But it currently works on the pullout because the game before Blademancer considered everything that was being pulled out a melee hit, right? I don't know if they will in the future, but currently that's how it works. So that means the pullout that does 35 damage with Blademancer now does 70 damage, which is half a person's health because people have 150 health. So it's basically half. It's a little under half their health with just the pull. Should that interaction still work in the future, whatever? I don't really care. But I do think Blademancer at 35 damage is not that big of a problem, and there's a lot of people conflating issues that may or may not be Blademancer's fault. The fourth point, final point I want to bring up is so many people complain about dying behind cover. If you get hit by a crossbow bolt and you should have died, I'm just throwing it out there. Let's say he doesn't hit you in the freaking toe. He hits you in chest, but for whatever reason, you're turned to your side, so it gets arm hit, right? Because your arm is blocking your chest. He hits you technically in the chest hitbox, but because of pen or whatever, it doesn't work. And you take arm damage instead of chest damage. That's RNG. That's luck that you survived. And you should have died if it did the damage, like the biggest hitbox in the way. if it did the damage to that, you should have died. But just because you turned slightly before you came out or something like that, it made it to where you didn't die. I don't think, this is just my opinion, I don't think someone should be upset that RNG is no longer going their way in RNG situations. Something that potentially kills, potentially doesn't kill, just straight up kills now, right? And it should straight up kill. Like if you happen to be turned just slightly, or they happen to be turned just slightly, and it hit your chest, you're dead. You're insta dead. So then someone who should have been insta dead, let's just throw it this way, let's say it hit chest, then complains about dying a second or two later. Like, let's say it was aimed at chest, it hit arm, and they should have died because it was blocking the chest hitbox. They die a second or two later, and they're like, "Raw! I had 1 to 2 seconds of a live time that I shouldn't have had. You should have died earlier. You didn't because of the arm hitboxes and how Hunt does its damage in the game. But that's what Blademancer's for, right? You pick a trade up to make your weapons more consistent, to make them better, right? That's what Fast Fingers does. That's what Iron Eye does. That's what Bolt Thrower does. That so many traits that improve your weapons. And I think Blademancer is a fine trait overall. I know it was a little bit longer than I said for Twitch chat, but I just wanted to go over some things. By the way, we focused a lot on the crossbow, but the bow, look at that. It also kills you at 10 meters. This does 246. The bow does 250 variable damage. For anyone who doesn't know, anyone new to the game, there's only 150 health for your hunter. And both of these weapons do almost double that damage. And yet people are complaining about dying to a one-shot from it. So I'm just throwing that out there. Just throwing that out there. That's going to be it.